Welcome to the LA Business Podcast, your destination to hear stories of how businesses grow and scale. I'm Robert Brill, CEO of BrillMedia.co and the host of this podcast. Now, let's jump right into this week's interview.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the LA Business Podcast. Today our guest is Joel Kenty, partner, business development of Green Knight Metal Roofing. Green Knight is located in Austin, Texas, and you're experts in residential metal roofing. Joel, thanks for being on the show today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
So when we met at a recent networking event, and you told me that a little bit about the origin of the business. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got into the metal roofing business?
Sure. I would say that it's a somewhat non-traditional way. I had a career in financial planning, and I did that for about 22 years. I have a cousin who's in technology, and he was in that field about as long as I was in finance. And whenever we get together at Christmases and Thanksgivings and those kind of things, we always talked about at some point in time going into business together, but we never really knew what that meant. But in 2016, opportunity came up for me to sell my financial planning practice. And I decided to do that. And at the same time, he was a contractor, and he was finishing up a big contract. And so the timing kind of was right for us to try and get together and explore opportunities. So we decided at that point in time that we would go out and start looking for a business to buy.
So that's really interesting, right? Where did you feel your skill sets complemented each other before you even got into the roofing business?
That's a great question. What I would say is that Jim, my partner's very analytic, very technical, very detail oriented. I'm more the high level driver kind of guy, and I think that our personalities complement each other very well, particularly in a business environment. Additionally, we've known each other since we've been in diapers, so that kind of helps too.
Definitely. So you went out looking for a business that would complement your skills and be something you guys would be interested in. What was your process that you embarked on when you looked for the business?
Sure. When we first started talking about it, I think that it was important to both of us that we found a business that we would both be interested in doing. That obviously makes sense. And I think that also he and I are both very eco-conscious people, and so something that had sustainability in the business was important to both of us. We also had to have something that had, for lack of a better word, low barriers to entry. For example, I mean, you can't go buy a plumbing company without being a licensed plumber, right? You can't go buy an electrician company, et cetera, because we'd have to get licensed, and neither of us had the desire or the capabilities to go do those kind of things. But believe it or not, in Texas, you don't have to be licensed to be a roofer. So barriers to entry were a little bit lower with regards to that. So we started looking on a website called bizbuysell.com and just looking for businesses that were for sale in our area, and just kind of talking about what might be interesting to us. And we looked at everything from bakeries to those kids' bouncy houses. There was a windows and siding company, quite a lot of different things. But when we came across the metal roofing company that was for sale, it definitely piqued our interest.
So what are some of the metrics that you analyzed as you were making this decision? Because, I can tell you, the first thing that comes to my mind when I hear about a business that's completely unrelated to what I know how to do, advertising, the first question that comes to mind is, I have no idea how to even validate whether or not I'm walking into a massive trap. How do you validate that?
Yeah, Excellent question. And what I'll tell you is that I probably knew a little bit more than you might, just because of in my career as a financial planner, I worked a lot with business owners. So I had a pretty high level understanding of the metrics in any case. But that aside, I had worked with several clients on the sell side of their business, and so I had worked with several agents that work on selling businesses, and so I reached out to some of them to see if I could hire them on the buy side, and I found that that's not really a thing. They represent the sellers because they get a commission on the sale, and there's not a whole lot of money in representing the buyers. So I was able to, through a few connections, find somebody who was retired from the field, and he agreed to represent us on the buy side, at an hourly rate. So we engaged him, and I would highly recommend that as an approach. I would not recommend going in it completely alone, because having somebody who has the experience of those transactions was really, really important. Not only in helping us to analyze the financials, but also to think about things like my prior experiences. I worked with high net worth individuals as my clients. Well, all my employees were very highly educated, highly credentialed people. In the roofing industry, that's not necessarily the case. And so it's an entirely different education level of people that you may be dealing with from an employee standpoint. And so having conversations like that is important as well, to make sure that you're aware of everything that you're going to get into.
Is there anything that you can point to that would be that you is there anything that you can point to that you can say, look, thank God we had this guy on our, the buy side agent thinking about us, because boy, if he wouldn't have been in play, we would have missed X. Is there one thing that you can pinpoint there?
Yeah, I think that there's probably a couple of things. The first thing is that the seller, of course, had a business valuation done, and this person, having had decades of experience in building and analyzing business valuations, basically got into that thing and tore it apart. And the amount that the buyer was asking for, after our agent did his analysis, was probably about 50% higher than what our agent felt the business was worth. So that alone, saves six figures. And then just taking a look at the financials, this person had an in-house bookkeeper doing the books, but never had it audited by a CPA or anything like that. And so the books were an absolute mess. And again, I was somewhat familiar with what the books should look like, but nothing to the degree that this agent was. And so having this person with the experience of being able to look at the books and say, hey, this doesn't look right, or this isn't entered right, and this is how this affects it, and those types of things really helped us to determine on the front end of things is that this business in real life is not as strong as it's made out to be in the selling documents.
Super interesting. And I can tell you, just as an aside, boy, when we got our bookkeeping in order, our invoicing just became so much smoother. And we've, as a first time CEO and entrepreneur, it's been really interesting to be able to see how much more power and how much better decision making I can have when we have our invoicing just completely set up. So the power of a great bookkeeper is massive.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So you bought the business. At what point did you? Okay, it's day one. You have the business now. It's your responsibility. It's like, okay, the work is just beginning. What do you do as you think about growing the business?
Yeah, so initially we were able to arrange as part of the transaction that the owner stayed around for a period of 3 months to train us because we didn't know anything about roofing, much less metal roofing, which is a much more specialized type of business. And so while Jim was really tied to the hip with this new owner, I'm sorry, with the old owner, learning the day-to-day operations of the business, I started really digging it into the sales and marketing side of things. Really try to get an understanding of how they sell their services and those types of things and how it's marketed, et cetera. We determined fairly quickly, I would say within a couple of months, that we wanted to rebrand the business, and there were a lot of reasons for that. But bottom line was that it definitely needed a new name and a new image, and so I started working on that. But the big mistake that I made is I turned off all of the marketing that he had in place. He didn't have a great website, but it was generating some leads, and there was some radio advertising going on, and I had the idea that well, if I'm going to rebrand it, why am I going to be spending all this money on marketing a brand that I'm not going to keep? Huge mistake. Our lead volume dried up almost right out of the gate, and it's pretty hard. We just bought a business, and all of a sudden there's very little revenue coming in while we're trying to get the rebranding going. So uh, once we got it rebranded, and the very first thing that I did, or actually while we were getting rebranded, I hired an SEO company. And I would highly recommend that for anybody that is in the business of generating leads. I mean, you've got to have a professional doing that for you. There is just way too much there for an uneducated person to try and figure out. I bought a book called Google AdWords for Dummies, and it stayed on the shelf because once I started digging into it, I just realized there's no way that I can do this myself.
And SEO becomes an incredibly monotonous type of job. I mean, you're literally filling out file names and descriptions, and you're trying to find a way to say the same thing 5 different ways.
Right.
It it's just not. I mean, for most business owners, it's just not the best use of your time.
Right. And it has to be constantly maintained and adjusted and updated. And, we had other stuff to do. So bringing in that SEO company was key from day
How
one.
long how long did it take for from start of when you start working with the SEO company till you start seeing some sort of results? What was the time frame there?
I would say that some level of results were fairly immediate. But as you're probably aware, proper SEO really takes time to build up. And over the last 4 years we've been doing this now, we've just seen a gradual increase month over month of improved lead generation to where now it is our primary driver of leads. Whereas in the early days, we had to spend a lot of money buying leads from services like Home Advisor, for example, just to keep the lights on.
So that's exactly what I was going to ask you. So you're saying SEO is your primary driver of leads.
Right.
Um, do you do any other type of marketing activities, or do you rely purely on SEO?
No, we do, but what I would say is that our digital marketing, which is the SEO and social media and those types of things, are definitely our biggest drivers of leads. The other reason that I really like them is that they're very easy to track. You start putting money into something, you can very easily go back and see what your return on investment of those leads are. I mean, of those programs are. But to answer the question, I mean, we have found some success in radio advertising, particularly on talk radio. We don't find that music shows produce quite the leads for us that the talk radio does, believe it or not. So that's been fairly successful. It's so successful, in fact, that we've committed to do a 1 hour radio show once a week as well, a home improvement show, and be the primary sponsor for that. But my sales manager is the host of the show, and so we just started doing that recently, and have already seen results. I would.
Tell us about the radio show, because there's a legal group of lawyers that I have family friends with, and they also have a show on talk radio. Tell us about how that got set up. That's really interesting.
Yeah, so I mean, it was something we were approached for with through our sales rep at the radio station where we do the primary advertising. And he said, "Hey, this Saturday morning slot opened up from 6 to 7 a.m." And I said, "Sounds great, but I'm not doing it." So we talked to our my sales manager, and he said, "Yeah, it's something he'd be willing to do." And but we decided that, obviously, to do a 1 hour show solely on metal roofing every Saturday morning probably wouldn't get the listenership as a more diverse show. So our intent is to do it as a general home improvement program, with every fourth or fifth show or something like that being about our product, which of course is metal roofing. But of course, the very first show that we did focus on metal roofing, and I actually got some leads straight out of the gate. So you wouldn't think that there are many people listening at 6 o'clock in the morning on a Saturday, but they're out there.
Well, I imagine also folks who have money for a change on their roofing definitely own a home, probably have higher income, probably a little bit older, probably more interested in talk radio than maybe talking in generalities, a younger person.
Yeah, absolutely, and exactly to that point, which is why we focus on that particular radio station and those particular shows, is because our demographic is almost exactly as you've described. Metal roofing can cost 2 times to 6 times an asphalt shingle roof. Depending on the product and the color and the style and all those different types of things. There really is quite a variety of metal roofing options available. Now, we do have discount options available too that can cost almost the same as an asphalt shingle roof. But the vast majority of people who elect to get a metal roof really want the color and the look and the style that they're looking for, right? And so that is more expensive than an asphalt shingle roof. So we are targeting people that do have the ability to pay for that.
And why do I get a metal roof? Why does someone do that?
Yeah, great question. It's kind of funny. We always say that our biggest competition is misinformation. But metal roofing is extremely durable. I mean, there's metal roofs on buildings in Europe that have been there 400 or 500 years. As a matter of fact, until the Cathedral of Notre Dame burned down, it had a metal roof on it, and had been there for hundreds of years. So these things will last forever. In Texas, it's pretty fun to kind of drive through the country, and you see all of these old barns that have rotted away with a metal roof sitting in the middle of the field. So it'll outlast the building. So that's the first reason. Second reason is that it's an extremely energy efficient option. An asphalt shingle roof will actually absorb heat and heat up your attic, thus causing your air conditioning bills to go higher. Whereas a metal roof will actually reflect the harmful UV rays. Even a black metal roof will reflect some level of the UV rays and keep your attic cooler. So it's a lot more energy efficient of an option. It's made from recycled material, completely recyclable at the end of its life. And the reason that most people buy them, they're beautiful. They add value to your home. They really can add a lot of curb appeal to your home.
So now the company is listed on the Inc. 5000. Tell us about how you grew, right? Like you took ownership of the business and lead volume dropped off because you changed the brand and you stopped the advertising and the marketing that was working. That was a good lesson. Don't do that.
Right.
How many years ago was this? And tell us about some of the key milestones along the way where you knew you had something good on your hands and you reinvested, or like tell us about a little bit about the business growth journey here.
Yeah, sure. So I think that some of the things that we did right out of the gate were immediately focus on the sales. Almost as soon as we got established, I hired a sales manager, even though I only had one salesperson at the time. And people would say, "Why you want to hire a sales manager? You got one guy." Well, I want 5 guys. I want 10 guys. I want this. I want somebody who can come in and build the team. And so that was the very first. It was a fairly big expense hiring a sales manager, bringing them in right out of the gate. But that proved to be extremely valuable. Focusing a lot of money on the marketing. Something on the order of 5% of sales on the front end of things, and then adjusting from there. But the lead gen was our highest focus at the beginning. The lead gen and driving the front end. Honestly, at first we weren't very good at delivery. We had a lot of problems figuring out how to efficiently install the metal roofs. But we are experts at that now. And so when you take a look at our journey over the last several years, our focus on the front end was really just driving that front end, driving the sales and the marketing. Our focus in the last year or so has been really driving the service delivery. Making sure that we've always known that we delivered an excellent product. That was never a question. The experience was the question. So now we are extremely confident that we are delivering an outstanding customer experience in addition to an outstanding product. And amazingly, when you do things right, people come to you. So we've seen our referral business grow dramatically, even within the last year. And as you know, referrals are free, right? You don't have to pay SEO companies to generate referrals for you. So the better we get at this, the more our business is growing. So going back to just the growth of the business, I mean, I think we're averaging something like 60% growth a year over the last 4 years. Of course, it's going to be difficult to sustain that rate the bigger that we get. But I think that there's no reason to assume that we can't continue to grow at 30% rate year over year going forward.
Let's take a step back to the sales manager. I think that's a really interesting thing that I'm very interested to learn more about. What did the sales manager do for you when you had that one seller in house? What tactical things did they do that made such a big difference?
Yeah, so the person that I hired is a quote student of sales. So he's very well read, self-educated, and did a tremendous job in building our sales presentation so that it is more consultative and educational rather than just sell, sell, sell. So building out the sales presentation on the front end, I think, was extremely instrumental. The training and development of the existing salesperson that we had, and then immediately starting to build the team, and starting to recruit and bring in excellent people, get them trained straight out of the gate, and then continue to revise and refine over time.
I love it. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because the way we've grown has been primarily through referrals and relationships and whatnot, and we're just becoming a sales organization now, and we have to do it organically. So your point of view about hiring a sales manager who knows how to sell effectively is a great way to position yourself for the future, not for the present. And I think that's a very interesting point of view.
Yeah, thank you. And I think that also it gives you some credibility as well, right? If I have a prospect that calls up, I can say, let me have my sales manager give you a call back, right? And right away, there's a level of credibility that goes with that.
What has the last how has the last year, COVID year, affected the business? And I think that's an interesting, particularly interesting for your business, because I mean everyone's at home. I think there's a lot of financial movement towards putting your money back into your home because people aren't taking vacations and going places. How has the last year affected your business?
Yeah, I think that you hit the nail on the head. I think that when COVID first became a thing, business didn't slow down; it stopped. The phone stopped ringing. The appointments we had on the books canceled. Some of the contracts that we had in place canceled. Just the uncertainty of the situation caused people just to just move into inaction, and that lasted for 6 weeks, 8 weeks. So we were in full on panic mode at that point in time. But then probably by mid to late May, we started to see that people were becoming a little bit more comfortable, at least with doing virtual sales appointments. And so we started to see that the calendar started to fill back up again. And then by June, we were kind of back up to almost regular pace for what we'd expect by that time of year. And then by July, we had a record month. And I think that exactly what you just said is what happened. People started to realize, hey, I'm home. I'm going to be home for a while. It's time to start taking care of these things. And the phone started ringing, and it didn't stop until September. I mean, it was crazy. So yeah, so we had a couple of really strong years of growth, and then last year we were thinking, well, okay, well, I guess we're done. And sure enough, we had something like I forget the exact number, but something like 40% or so growth last year, even with what we had.
That's incredible. Congratulations. I love hearing that. What does 2021 look like for you? Like, what do you focus on, right? Do you focus on hiring more or better marketing? Is it changing or improving your standard operating procedure? Where does your time go?
Yeah, so I had a leader early on in my financial planning career who used to tease me and say, "Hey, Joel, yeah, it works so good, I stopped doing it." Right? So I learned from that early on, and you look at the things that work, and you don't change them. So we're continuing to market, continuing to focus on the lead generation, continuing to look at other opportunities to get our name out. And so continue to focus on that is number one. Number two is as I've said, we're really focusing on the delivery of our experience, and we can always get better with that. And one thing that I would say there is that the systems that work when you're doing 1 million a year are not the same systems that you use when you're doing 10 million a year, and they're not the same systems that you're going to use when you're doing 50 million a year, right? So we have to continually look at our systems to adjust them for the increased amount of volume that we're continuing to do. And so certainly part of that is personnel. A big part of that is training. A big part of it is systems refinement and development, and innovation. And then of course, all with a continued focus on how does this directly affect the customer, right? So it's all well and good to say, okay, I'm growing by 60% a year, but if everybody that you serve would never use you again or would never recommend you to their friends, it's not a sustainable strategy. So we have to continue to focus on excellent delivery of experience in order to make sure that we're continuing to snowball the growth.
I like that. I like that point of view that the systems that work for one revenue level don't work for the next highest revenue level at exponentially of 5 or 10. When we look at our business, we're really saying, I'm really paying attention. I know as a business owner, I don't have to be involved in every single aspect of the business. What I do pay attention to is when I am involved, what am I seeing with the people I work with the client communications, with the processes. And I'm not necessarily looking at it from the perspective of is a person doing a good job? The question more is, what is the business not doing that it could be doing to serve the folks who are inside our team, to make them have a better platform to stand on that can then provide them an opportunity to excel for our clients. So I'm looking at the minutia, and I'm really looking for the trends. Am I seeing a certain trend over time? How do you know when something needs to be changed or tweaked in your process as you scale your business?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think that what we say in our business is that systems run the business and people run the systems. So if there is a failure, we examine what happened and we can ask, was this a systems failure or was this a person failure? And if it was a systems failure, the question is, do we need to adjust the system? Do we need to change the system, et cetera? And if so, what do we need to do to make that happen? If it was a people failure, the question is, was the person following the system? If not, why not? And determine, was it a conscious decision on behalf of the employee, which is one course of action, or was it that they weren't properly trained, which happens, right? And so it helps us to identify training opportunities as well whenever there are failures. So I think that unfortunately, sometimes you have to wait for something not to work before you know that it needs attention. And that's just life, right? That's business, that's auto mechanics, that's home ownership. I mean, that's sometimes you just don't know you don't know you need a new roof until you got a leak sometimes, right?
Exactly.
So I think that unfortunately sometimes you're chasing your tail a little bit, trying to fix stuff that went wrong. But at least by understanding, is it a systems issue or a people issue, at least it helps us to narrow down where we need to focus our attention.
So Joel, if people want to reach out to you, what is your service area, by the way? Are you specifically you're in Austin, right?
Yeah, Austin / Central Texas. Our shop is in South Austin, and we service about an hour in any direction.
If people want to get in touch with you, learn more about your business, your services, how can people reach out to you?
Yeah, the easiest way is just go to our website, which is very easy. It's greenknight.com, and that's with a Knight. You wouldn't think that I'd have to tell people that, but yeah.
But you do.
Yeah.
Yep, I get it. Joel Kenty, thank you so much for being with us today on this episode of the LA Business Podcast. This was really informative. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the LA Business Podcast. If you like what we're doing on this podcast, please consider subscribing on Apple or Google Play, leaving a 5-star review, and sharing with your friends. If you have any questions, comments, or recommendations for a guest you'd like to hear on this podcast, please email me, robert@brillmedia.co. Thank you. Have a fantastic day.